Thank you. It's 7 o'clock, and I now call to order the October meeting of the Zoning Commission. Madam Chair, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Lundy,
Here.
Commissioner Darrett.
Here.
Commissioner Oster.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Schoonmaker.
Here.
Commissioner Hill.
Here.
Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Beeler.
Here.
Commissioner Daly.
Here.
Commissioner Jay.
Here.
Commissioner Frazier.
Present.
10 members present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum, and Commissioner Lee did ask me to announce she was here for our regular meeting and went home. She is not feeling well at all, so that is why her absence is what it is. All right. Law Director Moyers, I'll turn this over to you now, please, if you'll swear in any applicants or people that will be testifying tonight.
All right, if you're here to speak to this body, please stand and raise your right hand. If you're an applicant, if you're here in opposition, if you plan to speak, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Be seated, please.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you'll go ahead and read the first item, please.
Item number 53, 9-A-23-SP is a request of Patrick Hunt for a South City Sector Plan Amendment from Agricultural and HP Hillside Protection to LDR Low Density Residential and HP Hillside Protection. Properties located at 4424 Island Home Pike, parcel ID 110PD004 in the 9th Commission District.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Please come forward. If you'd introduce yourself, please, your name and address.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Patrick Hunt, 603 Kennesaw Avenue, Knoxville, 37919.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing none. Planning Commission, if you'd please read your recommendation.
Planning Commission recommends that County Commission approve the sector plan amendment to LDR low-density residential land use classification because of the access to sewer and significant changes in condition by a vote of 14-0. The HP Hillside Protection will be retained.
All right. Do you wish to say anything about your project, sir?
I would be happy to entertain any questions if there are any after folks reviewed the materials.
All right. Fellow commissioners, do we have any questions, comments? Seeing no lights? Commissioner Schoonmaker?
Thank you. Director Brooks, your staff recommended that they deny the sector plan amendment to LDR because the land use classification does not meet the land use location criteria. Did you want to expound on that for us?
Sure. Yes, that is correct, sir. Well, there was a couple different reasons. For one, that the subject property, the land use classification of agricultural did not align with its location in the urban growth area of the growth policy plan. So that was one of the rationale. And that growth policy plan defers back to the sector plan to ensure that it's consistent, so all rezonings amendments should be consistent. The ag land use classification, even though it's inconsistent with the growth policy plan, staff felt like it wasn't necessarily tied to an error in that plan because there had been community input.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other lights, Commissioner Daly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is some LDR down the street there. This area is going to be growing. And let me get back. I apologize.
Where's our LD?
1 second here, please. I talked to Patrick, or Mr. Hunt, I'm sorry. Talked to Mr. Hunt on the phone and last week.
Yes, sir.
He thought he might had to come and speak last week, but he did not. I'd like to make a motion to accept Planning Commission's action.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to accept Planning Commission's recommendation with a second by Commissioner Beeler. Is there any more discussion? Questions? Thank you. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Your motion carries, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the next item, number 54, 9-A-23-RZ, is also a request of Patrick Hunt. It's for rezoning from A agricultural to PR Plan residential, up to 5 dwelling units per acre. The property description is the same as the previous item.
All right. If you would introduce yourself again as the applicant.
Hi, I'm Patrick Hunt, 603 Kennesaw Avenue, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919.
All right, and is there any opposition present? Seeing none, Director Brooks?
Planning Commission recommends that County Commission approve the PR Plan Residential Zone up to 5 dwelling units per acre by a vote of 14-0.
All right. Any discussion? Commissioner Daley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Keep forgetting to push that button. Mr. Hunt, you and I spoke, you were planning on doing tiny homes here? Something similar to a tiny home?
Something similar. A tiny home is typically defined as about 600 to 650 square feet, and my plan calls for a handful of very small footprint homes that are about 1,100 square feet.
How many square feet, I'm sorry?
About 1,100.
1,100. And to me, that's part of that missing middle.
Yes, sir.
Their price point won't be way out there to where South Knoxville used to be a starter community where you can come in and buy a starter home and as a young couple. So I think this will meet some of that. You know, do you know your price range? You don't have to tell me. I mean, that's not my business to know that.
It's a great question. When we first bought the property in 2019, we priced out the units. Pricing has changed dramatically since that time. And we haven't repriced it until we go through the rezoning process and are prepared to move forward.
I'll make a motion to approve per Planning Commission recommendation.
We have a motion on the floor and a second by Beeler approving Planning Commission's recommendation. Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck on your project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item, please.
Item number 55, 9-D-23-RZ, is a request of Rick Harbin for rezoning from A agricultural to PR Plan residential, up to 5 dwelling units per acre. The property is located at 7620 Rio Grande Drive, parcel ID 066-12006 in the 6th Commission District.
Thank you. You are the applicant. Would you introduce yourself, please, and your residence?
Yes, ma'am. I am Rick Harbin, and I live at 7615 Rio Grande Drive, Powell, Tennessee.
All right. Is there any opposition to this project? Seeing none, Director Brooks, would you read the recommendation?
Planning Commission recommends that County Commission approve the RA low-density residential zone because it's consistent with the sector plan and surrounding development by a vote of 14-0.
All right. Would you like to speak to this project, Mr. Harbin?
Well, it's been in my family for years. It's been agricultural, but it's landlocked with residential. It's only appropriate to take it to residential for future development. It's a small lot, and I could only get a house or two on it, so I don't have any immediate plans.
All right, all right. Commissioner Frazier. Oh,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have a density that you're considering? You said 1 to 2 houses.
I'm only allowed one house on the lot. Now, if it was subdivided, I'd be allowed one on each lot.
Okay.
But it's only about, what, acre and 1.6 acre?
1.61.
Yeah, so it's small. I don't have any multi-house plan.
Okay, Thank you.
Seeing no other lights, this does lie in my district, and I make a recommendation that we approve the change of zoning to RA as recommended by Planning Commission.
Madam Chair, with a friendly amendment, if you would include either the number of units or a density in your motion.
With RA? I think RA is, it's the 10,000 square feet per acre, I believe.
Yes, it is going to RA, which has a maximum or minimum lot size, which minimizes that sets the density. This is not a PR zone. David Harbin, 4334 Paper Mill Drive. Sorry about that.
I apologize for that.
And I would pose the chair to Director Brooks. What can be put into the motion to ensure that one house is built? I know that it's a 10,000 square foot requirement.
I don't know that I would recommend that you add a density limitation to this. I think that, I'm not sure of any other cases where that has been put into place. I would defer back to the zoning regulations.
Mr. Harbin, did you want to speak to this?
We got, the density is set due to the RA zone. The minimum lot size has to be 10,000 or greater, so that will limit how much of a density that we can have there.
I do agree with that, Ms. Frazier. Do you? All right. My motion stands as presented then. Did I have a second on that? Motion by Hill, second by Ward. Is there any more discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item number 56, 9-E-23-RZ, request of Alex Boltzat for rezoning from RA Low Density Residential, RB General Residential, and A Agricultural for 5703 Millertown Pike, and from RB General Residential for 5701, 5707, and 5709 Millertown Pike to PR Plan Residential up to 5 dwelling units per acre, parcel ID 060, 020, 021, 022, and 023 in the 8th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Hi, would you
Hello.
please introduce yourself and your residence?
Alex Bautizat, 4317 Balkan Pike.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this? Seeing none, Director Brooks, would you read the recommendation?
Planning Commission recommends that County Commission approve the PR residential zone up to 2.75 dwelling units per acre because it's consistent with the sector plan and surrounding development, subject to one condition by a vote of 13-0.
All right. Commissioner Schoonmaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Brooks, is the one condition the condition that's spelled out in the staff recommendation of the parcel what has 25% or greater slope shall be left undisturbed?
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, or Commissioner Beeler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am inclined to make a motion to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation of 2.75 dwelling units per acre, rezoned to PR at 2.75 dwelling units per acre, subject to the one condition that the rear of the parcel with slopes of 25% or greater shall be left undisturbed.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Beeler, second by Daley. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck on your project, sir.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 57, 9-F-23-RZ, request of Randall J. Sparks for rezoning from A agricultural to TO technology overlay and PR plan residential up to 3.5 dwelling units per acre in TO technology overlay. Properties located at 3303 George Light Road, parcel ID 089-16501 in the 6th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? All right, we'll move that to the end of the, is someone over there? All right, we'll move that to the end of the agenda then. Next item, please.
Item number 58, 9-H-23-RZ, request of Parker Bartholomew for rezoning from A agricultural to PR plan residential up to 5 dwelling units per acre. The property is located at 3430 Zion Lane, parcel ID 091042, part of, in the 6th Commission District.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Your name and residence, please.
Parker Bartholomew, 1218 North Central for Angelic Ministries.
Thank you. Is there any opposition present? Seeing none, Director Brooks?
Planning Commission recommends that County Commission approve the PR Plan Residential Zone up to 4.91 dwelling units per acre because it is consistent with the Northwest County Sector Plan and surrounding development by a vote of 14-0.
All right, thank you. Would you like to speak to this project?
Yes, ma'am. After speaking with Chair Hill, we're agreeable to reduce our density to 4 units per acre on this site. Throughout this 3.5-year process, I've spoken to many of you, and I'm appreciative of all the questions that we've received. Multiple meetings were held with the community and the neighbors. At our 3-day open house, everyone was invited to tour our existing property and look at the tiny houses. It's important to note that the current zoning and the use on review that's in place would permit 3 boarding houses that could house up to 36 additional people. This rezoning will allow up to 13 units of permanent supportive housing, and this will provide affordable housing for our men during transition. When combined with the employment and the vehicles through a partnership with PALS, these men are able to be successful as they go through reentry. We ask that you approve the rezoning again to 4 units per acre, which is what this property was previously zoned, and it matches the zoning of the 2 adjacent properties to the south. Thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this project? Seeing none, as the district representative, I would like to make a motion that we approve this planned residential zone with up to 4 dwelling units per acre.
Second.
Motion by Hill, second by Oster. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck
Thank you.
on your project. Next item, please.
Item number 59, 9-K-23-RZ, request of S&E's Properties for rezoning from A agricultural to PR plan residential up to 4.5 dwelling units per acre. Property located at 1103 and 1109 Fretz Road, parcel ID 130-067 and 066 in the 6th Commission District.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yes, Ben Mullins for the applicant. Also have Mr. Scott Smith with S&E Properties here.
Thank you very much. Are there others here to speak to this project? All right, thank you. The applicant will have 5 minutes to address the commission, and then opposition will have 5 minutes, and applicants will be able to respond. Before we start, though, Director Brooks, would you read the recommendation?
Planning Commission recommends that County Commission approve the PR Plan Residential Zone up to 4.5 dwelling units per acre because it is consistent with the changing conditions and surrounding development by a vote of 14-0.
All right. Mr. Mullins, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm hoping it's not so much opposition as just more expressing concerns. This property may seem familiar to you. It was in front of you back in May with a different applicant and a different attorney asking for 5 units an acre, and they ultimately, after the sector plan amendment was changed to LDR, they withdrew their zoning application, and then my client has moved forward with a different application for the 4.5 units an acre. Since that time, we have reached out to Commissioner Hill and asked her, who do we need to speak with in the neighborhood to talk about the concerns that may not have been talked about before. And she put us in contact with Ms. Barker and at the Brandywine HOA, and we met with them once on October 11th with members of the community in the HOA. We had Commissioner Frazier was able to be there as well as Vice Mayor Pavlin, who's behind me, who intends to speak tonight as well. She's with the town of Farragut. And we talked about there's ongoing drainage concerns. To the north of the property is an older subdivision built in the 70s, Ridgeland. It was developed in the county and under the RA zoning in the 1970s. And as we all know, in the 1970s, the stormwater ordinance that was in place isn't nearly what it is now. And there is ongoing issues with drainage from Ridgeland onto the Brandywine property. They don't have, I think they have substandard pipe sizes, and they don't have any type of detention or retention on that property. But we talked to them about their concerns with some of the ongoing development, some of the erosion, some of the traffic concerns that they have with the intersection of North Campbell and Fretz Road, and concerns with the property itself, with their potential for, closed depressions or sinkholes on the property. And we, at that meeting, Mr. Snowden was actually out, and he talked about the planned improvements of Fretz Road, and I emailed you guys a copy of the plans that are in place, and those plans should be done, completed with a left turn lane into Fretz Road from North Campbell before we are completed with our project. We still have to go back through a development process with a concept plan and development plan to move forward with exactly what we're going to do on that. We don't have a layout yet on exactly what we're wanting to do, but we're hoping to get 4.5 units an acre to give us some flexibility in trying to creatively design this around some of the environmental problems that are there, trying to address the water that's coming onto our property and moving across to Brandywine. And if there are any sinkholes, we'll have a geological study on that, and we'll have to comply with Knox County's regulations on what can we do in the vicinity of a sinkhole and exactly what we can do with that. We don't know if there are any there yet or not. There's certainly some topography there. There's not a lot of hillside. There's only a little over 2 acres that's technically in the hillside protection. Most of that is less than 15% slope. I think that, if we were in the city and we had a disturbance allowance based upon the hillside protection, I think most of that would be allowed to be disturbed even with the hillside protection that's in place. But we committed to working with the neighbors, not only now during this process, but as we move forward with the development plan. Mr. Smith, actually this weekend, walked many of their backyards and actually saw the issues that they were talking about in person, and was getting ideas on how we can address that as much as we can. We can't solve the problems of a subdivision that was built in the 70s. We can make sure we don't repeat them with our subdivision, and usually when you have a piece of undeveloped property that gets developed to modern standards, it can actually have the effect of improving the drainage in that area. We've also understood that, and this came up during the meeting on October 11, that even though the maximum density we can get at 4.5 units an acre would be 58 units, that wouldn't automatically trigger a traffic study. But because of, there's ongoing issues there that have been discussed, there's ongoing improvements there that are planned, that the county would want to have some type of traffic study or traffic impact analysis, traffic impact letter, and we'll be happy to work with the county as to what that scope would look like and meet their recommendations and whatever Knox County would have us do with that. So that's not an issue at all. So again, we'll be engaged with the neighborhood, not just now, but when we move forward back through Planning Commission with a development plan on this. Mr. Smith and I would be happy to answer any questions, and I'd appreciate an opportunity to speak if there's any other issues I haven't addressed that comes up from the neighborhood. So thank you all very much.
All right, thank you. Ms. Pavlin, would you like to come up and introduce yourself and residents, please?
Louise Pavlin, Knox County. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to this rezoning request. You received my email about the town's concerns regarding this rezoning request. In the interest of time, I will not repeat the contents of that now, other than to reiterate this point. As proposed by Madam Chair Hill, the last time these particular parcels were considered for rezoning in May, a transitional density would better preserve the character of the existing neighborhoods Ridgeland and Campbell Crossing. Given that Ridgeland is approximately 1.5 units per acre and Campbell Crossing is approximately 2.16 units per acre, we believe a density of 2.5 to 3 units an acre would be appropriate. I understand that many times the developer states that they need a certain density to address the concerns of the impacted neighborhoods. In this case, they need the extra density to adequately address the stormwater issues. The stormwater issues should be addressed regardless of the density approved. It is not the role of our community to assure the developer attains his desired profit margin. The character of Ridgeland and Campbell Crossing should not be sacrificed in order for a developer to address the stormwater issues, particularly in light of the fact that Knox County taxpayers, which include the residents of the town of Farragut, have already been saddled with the bill to pay for the left turn lane at Fretz Road on Campbell Station Road, which was required due to the density of development that has been previously permitted. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would introduce yourself, please, and residents.
Teresa Barker, President of the Brandywine HOA, Knox County. And pretty much what everybody has said here, our neighborhood is concerned with 3 basic things. We're concerned with the road safety, Fretz and Campbell Station, and Hatmaker, and with the drainage that has been extensively described, and with privacy with the homes that abut the proposed development. There are homes in our neighborhood that right now would abut that development, and we would like to have a buffer and some privacy trees or something put in place so that the new development isn't looking into our homes and vice versa. With regard to road safety, we have 3 developments plus our own and one already, well, we've got about 5 developments and 3 are already being built. When they're all completely finished, this little country road will have over 400 homes just using this one little country road. With the average home having roughly 2 cars per home, that's around 800 or so cars running up and down Fretz and Hatmaker. It is a very dangerous situation, even currently with the cars that are running up and down it now. We have a sharp turn on Hatmaker and Fretz, and the intersection of Campbell Station and Hatmaker really needs to be addressed. Whether it's a sign or a calming circle, something needs to happen. With regard to drainage, we have flooding. We have, on a steady rain, water runs across Fretz and the dip. We have homes that have standing water in their backyards. One home, which is not directly related, that butts up to Ridgeland, her backyard is always wet. I'm hoping that with the possibility of working together with the new development, that we can come together and solve a lot of these drainage issues, but those are our concerns with regard to moving forward. I'm happy to work with everybody to see that we can all come to a reasonable conclusion, and would also welcome the commissioners, engineering, to come and visit these homes to see what is actually going on. And I thank you for your time and for the time you've already given us previous to this meeting.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this? Mr. Smith, were you wanting to speak? You're fine. Go ahead and please introduce yourself and residents.
Yeah, my name is Scott Smith, 405 Montbrook Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919. I'm the developer here, and I just want to go over a couple of things that were touched on. I walked out, first of all, regarding drainage, I went out and met with the folks in Brandywine, and we looked at their issues. I don't believe any of their issues will be affected in any way by the development of our property. There's 2 things going on with their drainage issues. Number one, Ridgeland, which is They have half-acre lots because they're on septic tanks, and they are in the town of Farragut to the north. They have one pipe. They have no infrastructure for drainage but 2 catch basins, no pond. And the one pipe is an 18-inch metal pipe that discharges across a small strip of land, and there was a receiver pipe that had brush all over it, and that's where they got really badly flooded. And this doesn't cross the property that I'm looking at, and it doesn't drain to the property I'm looking at. It just came across, and I saw videos, and it is a problem. And, I mean, if we can help with that, that's great. But there are solutions to their problem that don't involve me, and I'll be glad to, I told them I'd be glad to help them with that. The second problem they have is the houses in this little area that are collecting water. We were there Saturday, and they're wet now, and it hasn't really rained in so long from irrigation. But the houses, I think, were set too low, and the houses are the low point in the lot. So there's nowhere for the water to go. And we met one lady who said, I keep putting dirt here, but it's just the water's moving around. But a French drain, I feel like would help. On some of these small lots, we do French drains. It allows, underground, the water to get low and get out. And I've got a contact that can help them with that. I'm going to share that with them. But drainage issues on the property we're looking at, now listen to everybody talk, it seems like this is the worst property in the world. It's really a fine piece of property. There's nothing wrong with it. It does have a couple of challenges. But there's nothing that we're going to do that's going to affect them in a negative way. I'm happy to put evergreens, trees along the boundary that we share with Brandywine, because that was a concern that they had. We can do that. The second thing is, at 4.5 units an acre, if you just look at zoning, the appropriate use of this property, what is it? And this is less than a mile from an interstate interchange, Campbell Station Road. I think I measured it at like 3,800, 4,800 feet to the Campbell Station exit to this property. There is not a more perfect property for the upper end density-wise of low-density residential. There are 2 apartment complexes almost on the other side of Campbell Station Road. Today, we are in a severe lack of housing, and cost-wise, people are having a hard time with affording these homes. Density helps us make things cheaper to the people that are buying it. I mean, we can spend all the money in the world, but we got to pass it on, and it just hurts the end buyer. So I would ask that you give us a little flexibility at the 4.5. We'll be happy to work with the neighbors and continue to help them with their drainage problems, but honestly, I don't think there's a lot that our property does to affect those problems.
Thank you.
I guess that's it.
Mr. Mullins?
Just briefly, when we look at the zoning, and I think Vice Mayor Pavlin mentioned transitional density. If you just look at the zoning map that's attached to the report, I mean, you've got Ridgeland to the north. Now, it's developed on half-acre lots because they're on septic, but the RA zoning would allow 10,000 square foot lots if it had water and sewer, and so that's roughly 4.3 units an acre is what that density would be for the RA zoning above it. Brandywine, Ms. Barker, where she lives, the subdivision we're talking about, it was zoned at 5 units an acre and I think built out at roughly 4.5. And so we're right there. And you look at the other zonings, there's 4 units an acre interspersed in that area as well. So we believe that the 4.5, as Mr. Smith said, is right in line with the upper end of density. And, again, this is the first step in the process. There's a planned development stage that'll come through. We're going to be working with Mr. Snowden and his folks to address the issues that this development will cause. And so we do appreciate your consideration in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay, your light is on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Stone, can you give us an update on the infrastructure work that was mentioned that we've talked about before and where that lies in the process?
Sure, be glad to. I think we ended up with about 7 or 8 parcels that we had to acquire some minor right-of-way from to expand the roadway. The town of Farragut was gracious enough to grant us a design variance to their normal standards, so we did kind of shrink it in a little bit. That saved us some cost and, allowed for that narrowing of that right-of-way. I think we have 3 of those under contract. The other 3 or 4 we're still negotiating with. As Mr. Mullins mentioned, our anticipated start date would be early spring. We foresee the next 2 to 3 months, we'll be able to resolve these right-of-way concerns because they don't appear to be any significant acquisition. And then we could start construction, hopefully sometime in April, probably, 120-day, 4-month project, pretty straightforward, depending on utility relocation. So it would be our hope to have this project complete by late summer of next year.
Okay. Ms. Pavlin, I have a question. Can you help me? You mentioned that this is, and your email mentioned that this property is in the Farragut urban growth boundary,
Yes,
but it's not in the town of Farragut.
no.
Help me understand how you have jurisdiction over something that's not in your jurisdiction.
Well, we don't have jurisdiction, but that's the struggle that we're addressing right now with going through this growth policy plan amendment. This area on our land use plan is low-density residential cluster, but our cluster only allows up to 2.178 units per acre, which is why Campbell Crossing is 2.16 units per acre.
But help me.
And that's why, I understand what you're saying, but I'm also, we do transitional, we have a transitional philosophy in our zoning ordinances, or, I'm sorry, in our land use plan for this particular issue, where you have something that's 4.5 units per acre below it, and then you have 1.5 units, which was developed in the county at the time. We think a transitional density allows you to look at what's going on around it and absorb it. And it was proposed by Madam Chair Hill at the last, during your May discussion. And I thought that was brilliant that she had stated that, because it really does help in the appearance of what's going on with Ridgeland. That's an existing neighborhood. You put 4.5 units per acre, it gets crowded up there, and it looks completely different than what Ridgeland is. By providing some transition, making those lot size a little bit larger, you're going to allow for a better look and feel for the entire area. The other concern is that there is more to come on this particular corridor. There's a lot of agricultural on the other side that is as well in Knox County. That whole corridor is getting loaded down. If you go look at it, it's loaded down. It's what's going in there is very dense for single-family detached. And that is our concern. We're the ones that absorb a lot of this traffic. We're going to be dealing with the conditions that are on Campbell Station. We're the ones that have to deal with trying to connect, because the rest of that, finding a way to connect all this in is going to fall to Farragut, because that's in our jurisdiction. If you look beyond to the, I guess it's to the east.
Do you have other areas outside of the township of Farragut that are in the urban, all over the place?
No. I think we have less than a square mile of urban growth boundary. The other area of growth boundary is Concord Road, by Old Concord area. Concord Road itself is in the town of Farragut's boundaries, and then right outside is Knox County. So,
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just harder for me to, I understand the transitional thing, and we're all in the county together, whether you're city, Farragut, or county. And when one thing is built here, it affects, everybody's affected by everything in growth, and there's hardly going to be a parcel of land that inside of a sort of a corridor area that's not going to be developed at some point as we grow as a county.
I don't disagree with you.
I guess I'm struggling because I remember this back in May, and it's sort of like everybody wants to tell the landowner what to do with this piece of property, but when the landowner wants to try to help some of the other previously existing issues, nobody wants to give them the tools to be able to have the resources to help other people. And so it's like,
They have the tools. I don't
no,
agree
but I
with
mean,
you
the
from that.
density, I mean,
Yeah.
in building, the density allows for a larger, economic footprint to be able to invest more in drainage and infrastructure and this and that. and the
Well, I
other.
would use Campbell Crossing as an example. Campbell Crossing is our R1 OSR overlay. It was allowed to have up to 2.178 units per acre. They got to 2.16. They have, and 35% open space. And they were able to put in their stormwater drainage, and those houses are selling about the same as the houses in Brandywine. So
Well,
much lower
I guess
density
I'm
and.
struggling because it's like there's so many conditions on this little corridor, yet Knox County is investing, a significant amount of resources into helping with the corridor. But
And Commissioner Jay.
it seems to be hamstrung, this one little sliver, and everything around it is developed out. I'm just trying to figure out why we don't need more housing everywhere,
Well.
especially like
we're
so
try-
close.
We're trying to remain true to our character, and I know that was important as you guys are going through your growth policy plan and through your the new plan you're going to place. Character is important to you, and the character of that corridor is important. I understand that you think that this is about residential, but when you drive down that corridor is rural in feel, and most of the residents in that area would like to preserve that rural feel. I will add this.
Yeah, but
The-
let me-
hold
let me
on.
stop-
Can I
let me
can I
stop you real
finish my
quick,
thought?
because-
Can I
yeah, but
finish?
let
Can I
me-
finish
let me-
my thought, please? We have invested an incredible amount of money over the last 43 years in our entire town to absorb traffic and growth that is not created by us. We are hit pretty hard by Chodo traffic that comes up through McPhee and Virtue Road. We recognize that we are part of this whole infrastructure network of roads that we need to get traffic through. We do this willingly. We've done it willingly for 43 years. We are trying to advocate for, to preserve some of the character of Ridgeland and not go from 1.5 units an acre, regardless of how it got there. It is 1.5 units an acre to 4.5 units an acre. So I apologize.
But no, I don't mean to, look, we talk all the time, and so I'm happy to have the dialogue. I don't think you can have it both ways. I don't think Farragut can say, we welcome everybody to come in, we love your tax dollars, we love your shopping, we love your commerce, but it's not our, it's not our fault that we have all your traffic. Like, you get it regardless. I mean, we all get it regardless. It's not like you guys are sitting there going, oh, don't come here, we want to keep everything super rural. I mean, everybody has welcomed growth and opportunity, and I think that's a good thing. I guess my hard part is like, you've got a lot of different neighbors in really, really close proximity that are just fine living in their neighborhood, that was somebody else's farm, that was somebody else's rural field, that was
Don't-
somebody else's character
disagreement
and
with you.
preservation.
Yep.
So everybody else that lives there now is just fine, but the next one, well, not so much, and the next one, not so much, and the next one, not so much. And that's my problem is sort of why we talk about wanting things denser in closer corridors to things to keep the rural areas more rural and preserved. Yet it seems like this commission, like every time we get to a spot where it's in a tighter corridor with more development and in exactly what we asked for, then we slow down and go, well, maybe a little too dense. And then we've exacerbated our problem again and again because the next farm is going to be more sprawl and more sprawl and more sprawl. And that's this reaches every corridor or every characteristic of like corridor density, yet we're not taking opportunities for it. And that's where I really have a problem going down in density here because it's literally surrounded by the exact same density in most of the areas. So
All right, can I just, one last point, and then
Sure.
I'm going to leave.
Yeah,
then I'll
no,
leave
that's
it.
fine. And
Campbell Station Road is limited in our ability to expand it. You know how challenging that road is. It's going to be a matter of putting in turn lanes here and there. We're never going to be able to widen that to 3 lanes with a permanent turn lane. So those are our limitations. They just are. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I apologize.
fine.
I've lost
No, that's okay.
my train of thought. I will say this. I agree with you. people have a right to to develop their property. I very much believe and agree with property rights for people, constitutionally protected private property rights. I talk about all the time. You don't want to see a property developed, go buy it, please. Because in Farragut, we're kind of getting close to built out, and we're seeing a lot of it happen very quickly, and it's very overwhelming. But people have rights, and it makes sense. It also makes sense to look at the existing built environment and protect that and the character of that. That's part of what makes Knox County, is that we're looking at the character of things. So Fretz Road, to me, has got more of a rural character. Campbell Station Road can only be expanded so much. The opportunity to possibly connect Hatmaker into Everett Road has been taken away. That would have helped tremendously with connectivity. I know it was challenging because of topography, but we've put roads in challenging topography before. So I'm going to leave it at that. But thank you, Commissioner Jay. I appreciate your time.
Commissioner Schoonmaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Brooks, in the documents that you provided to us, could you go to the page following the staff recommendation? It's page 21-2. It starts out as comments.
Is the title public comments?
No, it just starts out comments. It's after your
yes.
staff recommendation.
Yes.
Did you find it?
Yes.
Okay, could you read the second paragraph for me?
Since a new application for the same proposal cannot be accepted by staff for a period of 1 year from the date of denial per the Planning Commission bylaws, Section 10, this application is for a slightly lower density than was previously requested at 4.5 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, but aren't they asking for 4.5 dwelling units per acre, and how can you accept an application less than 1 year?
I think there's a typo in that. I believe it was 5 previously. You can look that up.
So did you amend your Planning Commission bylaws, Section 10, or did you just make a executive decision?
No, I believe, my understanding is that the request previously was for 5 dwelling units per acre, but that the Planning Commission had approved at 4.5.
Okay, but your rules say you can't do it for a year, but somebody made it an executive decision then to go ahead and allow this to go through because it was a lower density?
No, the applicant can't make the same request. It has nothing to do with what the Planning Commission actually recommended.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. And then Director Snowden, do you see drainage issues on this property?
You know, I was looking at the topography of it, and much to Mr. Smith's point, this property sits above the folks in Brandywine, so pretty much all the water, or the lion's share of it, drains away from them. I guess that would be towards Campbell Station. It looks like a total of about 20 acres comes to the cross drain under Fretz. I think this property is about 12 acres, give or take, and then there's about 8 of Richland, or whatever that, I'm sorry, that may not be the upstream subdivision. So I do not foresee any drainage problems associated with the folks in Brandywine as part of this, just because of the way the land naturally lays. He's going to have to sheet his water away from them.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Mullins? Did you have a comment?
Just briefly, if I could, I really appreciate the dialogue between Commissioner Jay and Vice Mayor Pavlin. And I think, as I understand, being in the urban growth boundary for Farragut, the only legal significance it had was prior to 2017, when the state law changed, the town of Farragut could have annexed this property into their territory, and then they would have had jurisdictional control over it. And for whatever reason, they did not do that. And 2017 changed, you can't annex property anymore involuntarily. It's got to be by permission. So I think that's the only, I don't know if that got discussed in that part of it, but I just wanted to point out Farragut had an opportunity at one time to have jurisdictional control over this property and did not exercise that opportunity. And as far as the character, Brandywine's lot sizes are between 45 and 47 feet. We're looking at between 50 and 56 feet is what we're trying to target for. So the lot size is going to be similar in scale, maybe a little bit larger than what's there at Brandywine at 5 units an acre. And I don't remember looking back at the plan, if the town of Farragut objected to the Brandywine zoning at that time. I'm not sure. It seems like the same concerns would be in place there. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Frazier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to say thank you to Mr. Mullins and Mr. Smith for taking the time to go out and meet with the residents, and also the residents for being very diligent with their concerns and communicating those. I always have said in the past that we always seem to find more middle ground when we do that prior to these kind of very formal settings. And there were some really great discussions, and there are a lot of, I believe, serious considerations from existing development in this area that we absolutely should consider and protect those residents who are currently living on Fretz. My comments and questions, there has been significant residential development on Fretz with single access in and out, and that is a concern. And I know there had been attempts in the past to cost share some of the road improvements to Fretz as a result of that intense development. Director Snowden, are those discussions still active, or where are we on those?
They're not at the moment. We did discuss those early on, Commissioner, and we weren't able to agree on any kind of principal agreement with the various developers that were adding some of this traffic.
Were we not able to agree from a county side, or were we not being able to negotiate? What happened?
We always want to be fair and equitable. So what we had proposed to the group of developers that were there, Mr. Smith being one of them, was a pro rata share based on the traffic generated. Obviously, there's certain background traffic there now that, the county has, a partnership in. And then obviously they had a couple of subdivisions, both Mr. Smith and Mr. Davis. And we proposed that. I think their last proposal was that they would match $100,000, but unfortunately with the turn lane being the cost that it was based on our estimate, that we really couldn't find common ground as far as what we felt like was fair from the county's perspective.
That bothers me. I mean, I just have to be honest, that really bothers me. I don't know why we couldn't come to some sort of agreement with those who are contributing to the need for road improvements. And I feel like it's falling back on the taxpayers who currently live on Fretz. And so I would ask if there could be continued discussion, maybe we start those discussions again, but I would like to see some sort of cost-sharing agreement for these road improvements. Additional question, do you see site distance considerations here? I know there's a curve right there.
I looked at that, at the meeting that we had, there was some concern about vegetation, and I think, as part of our proposed project, we are going to be adding sidewalk and wider lanes. So that a lot of that vegetation will be removed. So I think we can achieve the necessary site distance with some minor modifications.
Okay. And then would this project warrant a turn lane, just this project alone?
It would. Based on as these folks have said, there's, been a lot of development on Fretz Road. So at this point, pretty much any additional traffic that's generated on Fretz Road is going to triple warrant for a turn lane.
Okay, there are two closed depressions on the property. If those do turn out to be sinkholes, is the applicant prepared to do whatever's necessary? I know that there's something like a 50-foot buffer or a 50-foot no-build buffer around the contour lines. That would be something that we would include, right, in,
I'm
with
sorry.
working with engineering?
Yes, there is a 50-foot buffer. You can build in that buffer, but it takes an additional geotechnical analysis to engineer the footing.
And then would it be appropriate for commission to include some of these mitigation efforts as conditions in the motion? Because these are things that I would like to see, you know, up to 5 conditions, like the applicant agrees to submit and adhere to the findings of a traffic impact letter. The applicant agrees to submit a stormwater management plan to engineering for approval at the time of the grading permit. The applicant will agree to a 50-foot no-build buffer around the largest contour line if Geotech Services determines sinkholes, a Type A landscape screen, and then the left southbound turn lane project being completed before the issuance of any building permits. I mean, those are things and protections that I would like to see. And those are really just my comments. Again, I really do applaud everyone's efforts on trying to do everything possible to protect those who are on Fretz Road. But I would really like some protections. And that's nothing on the applicant. That's just the state of where we are in Knox County. We seem to just get the short end of the stick on so many of these things, and these are just protections that I would like to see as a commission we start including in our motions. So that concludes my comments.
Are there any other comments? Well, big surprise, this is District 6 again. There's been a great deal of energy and effort put into this since it came before us under another owner a few months ago. And Ms. Povlin, you are correct. I did make those statements at that point in time because I had no contact from anyone except unhappy neighbors about that development. Since then, that has definitely changed. We have a new developer that's presented that has been more than willing to meet with the homeowners association. Also made some, reached out with some indications of promises that I'm about to include in a motion that I'm going to make. I am satisfied after spending a great deal of time talking with Mr. Stoughton that the water issues are not related to the property in question, that it is a problem that came from the existing subdivision that for whatever reason, and I don't know who that falls on, that is an old subdivision built years and years ago, that things were just not completed correctly. And it is something that's going to have to be addressed. Quite frankly, I'm not sure whose responsibility that is, if it isn't the subdivisions, or it's way too late to go back on the original developer with that, or if that's something that the county needs to look at. I mean, I don't believe the town of Farragut is going to be coming in and helping with that. Would that be correct?
I don't know what the issue is. I would not, I don't feel comfortable committing to something if it's something on the town of Farragut's in a right-of-way where we have an easement. But I don't even know when we pulled up the stormwater map, that's all I know, and I don't even know what that is. I don't know if there's stormwater pipes running through there, or and whose responsibility is it? Is it the HOA's? Is it the town of Farragut's? Is our part comes to where I know that as water moves through one property, is the way I understand it, it becomes the next property down issue once you get it off your property. But I have no idea what is going on there. Certainly, we'll have our engineer out there to look at it and work with, Daryl has a great working relationship with Jim, get them both out there to figure out what the issues are and where the responsibilities lie is certainly about all I can commit to, so.
But to be clear, that subdivision is in the township of Farragut.
It is, but it was developed in 1977, it was zoned, and it was still in the county. We weren't founded until 1980, and originally didn't come into the town of Farragut until 1986.
I understand.
So, but it's still in, yes. If
Right.
there's something in our jurisdiction that we need to be responsible for, we need to figure out what that is. I think that's something that Daryl and Jim will have to get together with and discuss, so.
All right.
All right?
Great, thank you for that. Mr. Snowden, in our discussion this morning, I asked you if you were willing to make the statement that the water issues currently in Brandywine, in fact, were not a result of the property in question and would not be exacerbated by the development of the property in question. Can you help me with that?
Sure, be glad to. Yeah, I don't foresee any exacerbation of the drainage that the Brandywine folks have now with the development of this site. I think the way the site lays and the way that we will work with Scott and his engineer, we'll make sure that any site water that's generated from his site will be moved to the east and won't necessarily cause any harm to the folks in Brandywine.
All right, thank you. I'm prepared to make a motion, and this is after a great deal of discussion with the HOA as well as the developer and the county. My motion will be, due to the flooding concerns and the intensity of development on Fritz Road, I make the motion to approve the PR at the density of 4.5, which is what is being asked, with 4 conditions. The applicant agrees to submit and adhere to the findings of a traffic impact letter. So if I am clear on that, if traffic impact letter says yes, ABC needs to be done on Fritz Road, in addition to what the county's already committed to, then that would have to be a condition of the development. Is that correct, Mr. Snowden?
Say that one more time, Commissioner Neal.
The applicant agrees to submit and adhere to the findings of a traffic impact letter.
Yes, that would be fine. Yes, ma'am.
All right. The applicant agrees to submit a stormwater management plan to EPW for approval at the time of the grading permit.
Yes, ma'am.
The applicant will agree, and I believe this is already in your code, the applicant will agree to a 50-foot no-build buffer around the largest contour lines if geotech determines sinkholes. Thank you. And the applicant will agree along the boundary with Brandywine to install a type A landscaping. Along that one boundary line. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none. Ms. Frazier, did you have a comment?
I would just ask that we also include that the left-south lane turn lane project be completed before building permits are issued.
Whoa. My issue with that is that it's something that sometimes even Mr. Snowden doesn't have total control over. I'm not sure how I feel about delaying an entire project. Mr. Stone, do you have any comments on that?
You know, and you're right, Commissioner Hill. I mean, one thing we haven't done a tremendous amount of here is utility coordination. Those things outside our control, obviously. So, I mean, there could be delays associated with that. I would like to think that we would get this project done next year, but there's always the potential it could, push that further out. So, I mean, unfortunately, I can't give you assurances that it will be done next year, but I will assure you that I'll do everything I can to achieve that goal within my ability.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, before we take this vote, is there any action that the applicant wants to take?
I'm sorry, would you?
I said, before we take this vote, is there any action that the applicant wants to take?
The only thing I would mention is on the holding of building permits, it's going to be a real problem financing a project that is dependent on a public project. That's what I worry about. I would see that as problematic. In this family, I'm trying to get them paid. It's an estate that owns the property. I don't want to delay that. I don't think it'll be a problem because it'll be a year to build this thing once we get everything approved. We haven't gotten the concept yet. Secondly, on the landscape buffer, I would like to ask that we consider type A landscape buffer is an extremely expensive buffer.
I know.
I don't
it
mind
is.
doing the evergreen trees along that boundary. I would also point out that although I've gotten to be friends with these folks in Brandywine, but when Brandywine was approved, the people that have been in this family farm forever got no trees to screen them. So I don't have a problem doing the screening because I think it benefits my project and theirs. But I would like a little leeway on which screening type we use. It's A, B, or C with the Planning Commission, if that's okay. Everything else is fine.
At Brandywine HOA, are you satisfied with the proposal that's been presented by this developer in the boundary landscaping?
I was just a little bit confused on the type of trees, how long they might take to grow. Are they coming from seedlings or?
No.
Yeah.
Aside
Terry,
from that-
speak into the mic,
I'm
please,
sorry.
in your question.
I was just kind of confused about the type of trees he was speaking of. Were they going to be seedlings or were they going to be somewhat mature? Everything else that you put in the motion, we're good with.
All right,
But I just wanted a little more knowledge as to what type of tree.
all right. Mr. Smith, would you confirm for that on the record then?
5 or 6 foot tall evergreens
All
is
right,
what I had in mind.
and the spacing on those?
There's B and C type screening. I don't remember the spacing. I want to say, I don't know. I don't even guess. Amy, do you know?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the number right, but I can.
You'll do it right, Mr. Smith?
Yes, ma'am. We will do it right. Yes, we will. I'm going to we're going to go look at my other projects where we have that, and she will see what we'd like to do, and I think she'll be very happy. I want to say they're 10 feet, they're spaced 10 feet or 15 feet, but I don't want to guarantee that.
If I could just suggest something, we all agree a landscape buffer needs to be there. I think there's some confusion whether it's type A is right or type B. I think that we will do a condition upon a landscaping buffer, but let that be within the discretion of the professional staff in evaluating what needs to be there and whether a type A, B, or C is more appropriate. I think typically on this type of development, they usually do a type B or C. when you're doing residential to residential. But I just don't feel like we're agreeing to a pig and a poke, and I think maybe give them time to study that. And we'll also work with the community, obviously, as this moves forward with the development plan.
Ms. Frazier? Oh, I'm sorry, who? I apologize. Commissioner Daley, I overlooked your light.
Got to get used to pushing that button. Mr. Smith, did you not agree at one time to pay $100,000 for Fretz Road?
Yes.
So a Class A is nothing. I'll stick with the Class A. Thank you.
Commissioner
Can
Frazier?
I tell you why I didn't do it in the end? When we first talked to Mr. Snowden about the need for the interchange improvements, which is a road that's under the jurisdiction of the town of Farragut, it was clear to us that we didn't have to do this because we weren't in that district, but we agreed to do it with the understanding that this would be an interchange turn lane, okay? When it came back, Scott Davis and I want to say we put up $100,000 apiece, but I don't remember the exact number. The design from the town of Farragut was $600,000. And that was just a whole lot more money than we were led to believe it was going to be. So at that time, we wrote an email or a letter to the town of Farragut and said, we would like to ask you to participate, and we will match your participation. And they would not participate. They wouldn't put any money into it. And that's how we ended up with the problem with that interchange, or nobody funding it. I'd also point out, though, that I counted up the new houses that have just been built over the past few years, Brandywine, Sonesta, those other ones. I think there's 378 new homes averaging $500,000 apiece, generating around $1 million in property taxes a year. Everybody blows that off, but that's a substantial amount of revenue that new homes and new families are paying. That should fund something, you know? So it's not like, I mean, I'm just a private individual. I don't get the tax revenue back, but.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Smith. We're bird walking a little bit here. Commissioner Frazier?
Thank you, Madam
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Daley, were you finished?
No, but I will be. I don't want to get in an argument.
We're addressing the motion on the floor. Commissioner
Madam Chair,
Frazier?
I just asked for a point of clarification. Are you asking for a landscape screen on the property line of Brandywine and Ridgeland, or is it or? Is it and or or?
My motion on the type A was actually intended for Brandywine. That did not rule out that planning would not also include whatever type that they decided on the Ridgeland side. But I may reword that. Commissioner Schoonmaker.
That was basically my same question. Were you going to include that in your motion that includes privacy screen for Ridgeland and Brandywine?
No. And let me Director Brooks, on that landscape, is it typically a B that you have on those areas, or
We typically recommend B,
a B?
and I apologize, I don't have all the details of the.
All right.
And landscape
I'll restate my motion and move that to a B, and it'll still be your trees, Terry. It's still the trees, for sure. All right, to restate my motion, please. Approval PR at 4.5 per acre with the conditions that the applicant agrees to, and adheres to the findings of a traffic impact letter. The applicant agrees to submit stormwater management plan to EPW for approval at the time of grading permit. The applicant will agree to a 50-foot, no-foot buffer around the largest contour line, geotech services to determine sinkholes, and landscaping buffer will be guaranteed throughout the boundaries that face any other homes.
I withdraw my second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Beeler, by Hill, second by Beeler. Is there any more discussion? All right. Yes, sir.
I feel like it's fair to ask this question. This traffic study that we're going to ask Mr. Smith to do is going to show this turn lane is warranted. Based on my interpretation of the new off-site turn lane, or the off-site ordinance, then we will require Mr. Smith to build this turn lane. I want to make sure that Mr. Smith understands that, because that would be my understanding of, and maybe Law Director or Deputy Law Director Moyers can clarify, but that would be what I'm hearing here, and I want to make sure that I am reading that right.
All right. Mr. Moyers, do you have any clarification on that?
I don't have it in front of me, but that's my recollection, is that if a traffic study indicates that after this, we pass the new ordinance that says that if a traffic study indicates that road work is required by the new development, that the developer has to front the money for that. That's my recollection. Now, I don't have that, unfortunately, don't have it in front of me at the moment, but it does put some substantial liabilities on the developer.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify that, because there was some conversation about the exclusion of the work that were previously planned. So I want to make sure that this body directed my department in what your wishes were. I'm good either way.
And I appreciate that. You will continue what you already have on the books, is my interpretation of that, what you already have planned to begin in April.
If I may, that's the second.
You can't be making a turn lane into a subdivision that doesn't exist. I'm confused here. I mean, Mr. Snowden can't.
Have you addressed me?
All right, Mr. Snowden, all right, help me with this. My understanding is that you have a project in the works. We've seen the sketch design on it that is Fritz Road, on Fritz Road.
Correct.
All right. Does that current plan include a turn lane or a dedicated entryway into that piece of property?
It does. But it's not completed at this point, obviously. And it's my interpretation of the ordinance that if this proceeds forward and Mr. Smith does a traffic study, then he will have to take over responsibility of that work that we're currently in process of doing. And that's what I wanted to make Mr. Smith aware of due to that substantial liability. That's my interpretation. I may be wrong, but that was what I thought was going to be the case. And I just wanted to be fully transparent there. And you had said
that.
exclusive at one point, and I wanted to make sure that that I understood what your intent was.
Thank you for that. Mr. Smith, did you want to respond?
Yeah, if it's appropriate.
Please, just,
Okay, I'm assuming there have been some traffic studies done on this intersection. I'm not sure why we're going to do another one. If I'm being asked to do a traffic study, which obviously has been done, if there's a project already on the drawing board, is it going to make an assumption that that project is done, or is it going to assume that nothing, it's existing conditions? And I mean, I'm just trying to understand what is being asked of me.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Because all we're going to end, I mean, you know, would it assume that it's current conditions, and when would this traffic study I'm being asked to do, when does it have to be ordered?
All right, and before I call on commissioners, I know I've got several lights. Could you respond to that, Mr. Snowden?
Obviously, you know, some of that would be relative to Mr. Smith's timeframe for development. We would allow a traffic study to be complete at any time during school periods. I mean, we wouldn't want it done during the fall, you know, the winter break. But, and we would look at the study as if it is existing conditions, even though it is in a transitional phase.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Beeler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, as the second to the motion, I just want to make sure that, is it your intent for the developer to pay the cost of this turn lane? Is that what we're trying to get to? Because I guess if the turn lane's already proposed to be built, then I'm not sure why we need the traffic study in the motion. Because I would assume the purpose of the traffic study is to determine whether or not we need a turn lane. And if we already have a turn lane proposed, are we trying to get to something through the back door here? Because I don't know that I'm comfortable with that.
I appreciate what you're saying, because I was not aware that specifically addressed an undeveloped subdivision.
Sounds like it does, based on Mr. Snowden's comments.
It does. I
That
would agree.
It would
Commissioner Jay?
suffice for this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of feel like you're talking about two different things. So
I think
there is an existing turn lane that the county is working on at the corner of Fritz and Campbell Station. When I heard your motion, it sounded to me like you would ask for a traffic study specific to that neighborhood, and if it is an additional turn lane that was needed to get in and out of the neighborhood, then that would be at the expense of the developer. Has nothing to do with the Campbell Station widening.
Correct.
Okay, so I think you're talking about two different things. Is that how I?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
so
correct.
you would need to do a traffic study as one of the conditions for this neighborhood, and if that traffic study said you need a right-hand in or a right-hand out or something into your neighborhood off of Fred's, then that would be at your expense, not having to do with anything with the intersection of Campbell.
And that is not apparently what Commissioner.
I think the two got combined
Director
somehow.
Snowden was thinking.
Is that what you're thinking, Mr. Snowden?
We do need
'Cause you're already building the other
absolute
one.
clarification. Mr. Snowden?
I was thinking that the concerns raised by the community were primarily more focused up at Campbell Station and Fred. So that was my interpretation. But, I mean, I see the confusion here, so.
My personal opinion is that those ought to be, you already have a project in the works, you're buying right away, we've already allocated money, you have a plan. Like, that's in Knox County's bucket. We made that decision. We're committed to that. However we got here, we all griped
We're
about
here.
that last year, and here we are. If it's a condition on this particular piece of land as a traffic in and out or any additional things, let that be tied to this piece of land. That's just my 2 cents.
Commissioner Ward?
I was on the same line as Mr. Beeler, Commissioner Beeler and Commissioner Jay, and just wanted to, I kind of want to ask my question after you make your adjustments. I don't want to jump the gun or anything, but I want to make sure that we're not lassoing everything in the right way, or we are lassoing in the right way, so I'm going to hold off for a second.
All right. Commissioner Daley?
I'm gonna leave that button on all the time. Director Brooks, do you have the screen pulled up, different types of A and B, what the differences are?
Yes, I do, finally. Correct.
Okay, with due respect, Mr. Commissioner Beeler, before we revisit that, would you allow us just to complete this one line on the traffic? And then I'll absolutely get back to if you have another question on landscaping. Would you be agreeable to that?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. For clarification, my intention was what I also heard stated by Commissioner Beeler and Commissioner Jay, and I think, well, I heard stated by the two of you. I did not intend for that to be part of what is already, regardless of how we got there, what was already in the bucket. I hear what you're asking, Director Snowden, and I appreciate that you bring this up for clarification. So, having said all that, would you like to speak now, Commissioner Ward?
Sorry, I trust you. I think you're on the right track. My only question would be to the law director is if I think a motion that Commissioner Hill's about to make, if the traffic study says anything about the turn lane down the street, does that subsequently like rope them into that turn lane?
Now that I'm clear
Yeah.
on what we're talking about, I think not, because
Okay. That's
that
all.
has already been determined.
Okay.
So any new traffic study would be on any conditions that are created now by this development, not that have previously been created by the developments.
That was my only catch question. Thank you.
Is that your understanding, Commissioner Beeler and Commissioner Jay? All right. Quickly, did you have a comment, Mr. Mullins or Mr. Smith?
Can I say something?
We're just making sure we understand that the condition would not include participating in the turn lane from Campbell and Fretz. It would be any new condition. We would assume that condition was rectified by the Knox County project that is in the works.
That
And
is.
the scope is limited to a turn lane in and out of the proposed development.
Well, now, I don't know what the scope's limited to, but it's whatever the traffic study determines as a result of you building your specific project.
Okay. That makes sense?
But not including,
Not including the interchange, basically as
not
it relates
including
to
Campbell Station.
whether I
Fritz
need a
Road.
turn
No,
lane to get
no.
in and out of our place.
Correct. Correct. All right. I will clarify that again when I reread my motion. Now, getting back to Commissioner Daly, did you have a question on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A new traffic study would show that Fritz Road's already being improved anyway, so that shouldn't be an issue. Going back to, and we got to this issue on Fritz Road because Mr. Davis and Mr. Smith backed out a gentleman's agreement. We passed an ordinance, didn't we, Jim, that this would not happen again?
We did, and that's why I'm sorry I led us down a rabbit hole there, but that's why I wanted to make sure that I understood clearly what the recommendation of this body was. So my apologies for that.
So this commission passed the ordinance this year, I believe it was. Just for clarification, it was a question about A and B screenings. I need a refresher course on it too. So Amy,
Okay.
difference between A and B?
A is what's considered a dense screening. It's typically between commercial industrial developments adjoining residential areas. It includes, and you guys already discussed this, but evergreen trees, typically 6 feet in height. They're continuous. It also can include evergreen hedge, fence, wall, or earth berm. And the type B is considered continuous as well, but it's there's a little bit more flexibility in what can be planted. So it should be a minimum of 12 feet in width. can include offset rows of evergreen shrubs or a continuous row of evergreen shrubs on a 3-foot-high berm, and also can be considered as a 5-foot-high masonry wall or timber fence with evergreen trees and low shrubs or climbing vines, or 1 row of evergreen trees with branches touching the ground.
All right. Are there any more comments or questions? All right, do I need to restate my motion with the conditions? I see a yes. All right, motion is, the applicant we approve density at 4.5 with these conditions. The applicant agrees to submit and adhere to the findings of a traffic impact letter related directly to the subdivision, the development in question. The applicant agrees to submit the stormwater management plan to EPW for approval at time of grading permit. Applicant agrees to the 50-foot no-build buffer around the largest contour lines. Geoservices determines sinkhole. The applicant agrees to landscaping, B landscaping classification as a buffer around the entire perimeter of your boundary that faces existing homes. And Commissioner Beeler's second is still standing. All right, is there any more discussion on this? All those in favor? Opposed? I believe it was, all right. Frazier and Daly, in opposition, so the motion passes 9-2. Did I make a mistake? Oh, I'm sorry, 8-3. Motion passes 8-3. No? 7-3, excuse me, 7-3. Thank you for that, Commissioner Ward. All right. Thank you. Is there a next item? All right, is Mr. Sparks here? Randall Sparks. All right, we will move that to the next item, to the next month's agenda. There are no zoning appeals. There are no amendments to county zoning ordinance. Hold on one second, please, before we adjourn under other business. I do believe if you all direct yourself to the screen. All right. This is my ending tonight. I want to introduce to you Dalton and Bradley Stills, our new grandsons of Drusilla. So this is where she's been while we have all been wondering why in the world your chair isn't getting anything done. It's because she has been taking care of these babies. So on that happy note, oh, did you have an announcement, Commissioner Daly?
I'm going to tie a ribbon around that finger. Tomorrow is the first meeting of the Advanced Knox Committee, 5 o'clock in
Thank
this
you.
room. I'll be here for about 45 minutes, then I got to leave. But if you got a chance, either watch it on TV or be here.
Yes, I would encourage all of you to try to be a part of that. All right, seeing no more lights, questions, or comments, we are adjourned.